Capital Views is sponsored by Northrim Bank, Alaska Oil and Gas Association, ConocoPhillips, and Linden.
Hi, I'm Tim Bradner with Alaska Legislative Digest, and welcome today to new Commissioner of Natural Resources, John Crowther. Commissioner, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, great to see you, Tim, and happy to join.
Commissioner, you have been Deputy Commissioner at DNR for a while, and you're certainly no stranger around the Capitol because you've been testifying in committees extensively. Legislators know you well, and they've heard you on various natural resource topics. But the being responsible for the entire department is kind of a new gig, and you've primarily been focused on oil and gas and land and sort of the hard resources. But what new parts of DNR do you have to kind of get used to and learn about?
Yeah, well, the learn is the key question. There's a lot for me to learn. I've been with the department, as you mentioned. I first started in 2012, and I've actually worked for our last 8 commissioners. So I've had a lot of examples of how to lead the department very well and capably. So I'm going to try and learn and apply from all those examples. But the breadth of what DNR covers is so vast. We're responsible for our state park system. We're responsible for um, a host of forestry related, both the production and marketing of our timber, but also wildfire response. And those are areas that historically I haven't worked closely on, but I know we have a great team working them, and so I'm going to be both learning and supporting them, and hopefully we won't miss a beat while I come up to speed.
Well, it's time to be a quick learner, and certainly a lot there to soak up. What is what's new on DNR's plate from your perspective this year? Not looking at things in the immediate horizon, but more sort of big picture, longer range.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I think the answer is that there's a huge, when we take a step back, there's an increased international interest in energy, resources, commodities, right? An era where people presumed that electricity and energy demand might plateau and decrease has shifted to one where people expect in the developed and developing world there can be growth, for everything from traditional oil and gas, renewables, electricity generation, transmission, and electricity usage for data centers. And so, to me, that benefits if you're a resource owner like Alaska. That means there's a huge sustainable demand for the things you have to bring to market. And we're also seeing all that technology applied to resource development. So we have more data about our resources, more technology for both assessing them, but also developing them efficiently, more energy applications to bring energy to remote areas. And so, I think all those things make Alaska's future tremendously bright. And it's an awesome time to be working on them at DNR as we see some of those things start to be applied and pick up steam in our state. So I'm a very optimistic guy right now. So,
But there's a lot to be done.
mhm.
You mentioned making information available. I know that DNR is very active in gathering. You have a lot of seismic information in your toolkit that has been given to the state through the tax credits that the seismic companies applied for. But is this something that you could really parlay into an advantage in attracting new investors?
Yeah, I absolutely think so. Both our legacy information, as you referenced, we have oil and gas seismic both in the Cook Inlet and on the North Slope that's being released pursuant to the expiration of the confidentiality period. So that'll be on the market, attracting more exploration and investment. We've also been working very hard to gather information about things like our mineral resources, and the kinds of data you can gather quickly, efficiently, easily is just surging, right? There's new technologies, new kinds of data to gather, new hyper efficient processing. And we've done things like we have what's called a hyperspectral scanner that assesses our legacy samples, creates much more new data with a non-destructive scan, and we can make that available. And so the amount of data we have already, we can make available and make use of in new ways, and we can gather new data at a kind of geometrically expanding rate. So it's a very, very dynamic and area for a lot of growth in the department.
And you have a huge amount of mineral samples in
Yep.
the storehouse. And you sort of mentioned that in terms of legacy work, you can gather information without having to actually go to the field. And this is in Anchorage. And how big is it? How
Yeah,
much?
so our Geologic Materials Center, our GMC as we call it, it's in an old Sam's Club facility on the eastern part of town, and it's a huge facility. They've got thousands and thousands, everything from actual physical core samples. So when a well, either for mining or oil and gas, is drilled, the tubular rock that's extracted, they've got surface samples, uh, all sorts of data that petrology, the chemical composition of samples. And so it really is a storehouse going back in some cases over 100 years old samples uh, from all across the state from every different resource. And one of the things that's so exciting is, what people gathered samples looking for mineral X or Y, oh, we think this is a gold deposit 50, 75 years ago. Today, we can take that technology back in, assess those same samples and say, well, there's rare earth elements here. There's a critical mineral. There's an associated mineral that no one was looking for at that time, but we don't have to go back into the field to gather a new sample to assess whether it's there or not. And so, the mining especially is very an active user of that facility, and we're hoping that only increases as the mining industry gets more excited in Alaska.
Well, Commissioner, I mentioned your previous work with DNR, but I neglected to ask, a little bit more about your background. I think you worked for Senator Minkowski at one time.
Yeah, so I worked in Washington, D.C., both when I was in law school and then a little bit about 5 or 6 years ago on the Senate Energy Committee staff when Senator Murkowski was ranking member originally and then chairman. And so worked on many of these same issues in Washington, D.C., and was very excited to come home in 2021, and I'm glad to be home.
And you mentioned home. Home is where in Anchorage, or
Yeah, I grew up in Anchorage. So,
and did you go to school here?
yep, went to high school there. I left college, but kind of ping pong back and forth. And as I said, Anchorage is home for now and for the future, and hopefully forever.
Well, that's a not unusual Alaska story. Well,
That's
thank you, Commissioner, for joining us, and
Yeah.
we'll stay in touch and continue the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Take care.